come up with stupid links to link things together, but I haven't for this one. So I'm mostly just going to welcome Tim Brunsden to the stage, who's going to tell us about Foral Civiallians.
Thank you very much. Yes, this is Foral Civiallians, which is an urban gardening project in New Brighton. Anybody from New Brighton in the room? Yes, cool. We look after the 24 brick planters in and around the streets of New Brighton. We're inspired by the community planting that went on in Cairn Street in Toxteth. I made a little film there about 2011, where a lot of the community got together to counteract the tinning up of the houses by planting streets and stuff, and they made a little market. This is Rimrose Valley, where I've also done some work, and that's a large wildflower meadow to help their campaign to fight the Port of Liverpool building a 4-lane highway through the park. And in New Brighton, it's had its problems. There is some dereliction. This is Witherspoons, boo. They've left that to rot. And there's been a few other derelict buildings and stuff. So we started the planting in the streets really to help sort of counteract that. Here we are. This is one of the brick planters. They're owned by the council, so we had to get permission to work on them. They were all overgrown, mainly. So we started by sort of cutting them back. We found out that they're quite good for if you're older. You don't have to bend down so much, which is quite handy. So that's a lot of the clearing that's gone. That's quite a nice sort of space, really. We've tried to keep what's there, try and get stuff that's going to come back every year, so we don't have to keep replanting things. We've had a drink on the way, but that's some of the stuff we've found. A lot of them were being used as litter bins. They've got their own issues, but we have seen some sort of wildlife come back, and the aim is to try and, as I say, look at sustainable planting, bee-friendly stuff. Some of the benefits is that we've met neighbours and things. People have brought us out cups of tea. We've managed to beg and borrow some stuff. We've planted spring bulbs. So it's kind of been quite good fun. This is a borage that we planted that's sort of come up. Somebody put in some tomatoes, and that's in one next to a mural. That's another sort of community action thing that's sort of happening to kind of revitalise the area. And we started to grow some seeds. We didn't really know what we were doing. None of us are really gardeners. We don't want to be doing it full time. But some of these seeds were harvested from what we'd grown. Some not successfully, some others, but we have sort of planted them out. And then we got some soil donated from Birkenhead Park, because a lot of the problem was the trees had been growing in the planters, but we managed to kind of repopulate them. That's a bit kind of rich, so stuff hasn't really grown that well in that, but it's sort of getting better and a bit easier. And this is sort of the result. We've kind of some of them were being looked after by people in the street, but we've kind of added to it. So there's a lot more variety. And again, we've been able to harvest some of these seeds and spread them around. But they're kind of looking a bit better than they were. And they were just, a lot of them were just unused spaces that I think were put into combat speeding cars, I think, initially. What was the reason behind them? But in this sort of the spreading of this sort of seeds, we were looking at other space. And this is it's private development. It's the land on the seafront, Marine Point, and it's owned by a management company that's responsible to shareholders. So we asked them if they could maybe work with us and do some stuff on this kind of ground, and they kind of went back to the shareholders, and the shareholders weren't really interested in doing that. So it kind of made me start to think about this sort of, it's public land, but it's owned and managed by a management company, so therefore your councillor can't do anything about it. You don't really have these things. And looking into it, there is something called the Landscape and Ecology Management Plan when the developments are made, and I think it's a 30-year plan to look at what happens to spaces like that and make sure that they're managed properly. And this was a case where it sort of hadn't and stuff. And I tried to find out about it. I noticed in Birkenhead, Wirral Waters, the planting's quite nice at the moment, but is that just to sell some flats, or what's it going to look like in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, and who's managing it? What is it if it's down to shareholders? This is Squash in Toxteth. They were lucky they bought the land and they built the building, but it's quite a good model because they're a CIC, so that's asset locked. So if their business fails, it has to go to another community organisation. So I was thinking maybe there's a better way than having shareholders manage this type of land. Maybe that money or funds could go back into maybe a community gardener or with somebody working with the parks and gardens. There's more of a long-term plan for these spaces, because otherwise it could just be left to be overgrown. So if you do know of any development, try and ask the questions about what sort of planting and who's doing it. Thank you.